Hey everyone, it's Chrissy and Charlie here from CS2, and on your episode of Forward Thinking today, we're covering another marketing ops debate, which is the W-shaped attribution model any good? Attribution is such a big topic. You'll see it everywhere on LinkedIn, and in the ops world, demand gen world, it is top of mind for everyone. But there's a lot of things that go into attribution, different types of attribution, what data goes into it, what tools you use, so much.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. So, but one that has gathered steam is a W-shaped model, and
or any, I like to call them lumpy attribution models.
Lumpy.
Should I define that?
I mean, yeah. Can you define
So any model that weights touch points differently across all of the touch points related to that opportunity. So W-shape traditionally would give 30% to first touch, 30% to the touch that happens just before the opportunity is created, and 30% to the touch that created the first lead. So those three touch points get 30%, and the rest of the touch points get the rest. Whereas, you can have a linear model where all the touch points get a proportion equally distributed. And yeah, there's lots of other kind of, in quotations, lumpy models as well. And you can make your custom model as well, which usually ends up lumpy.
True. Yeah. So Charlie went to LinkedIn with a post and talking about why he thought, or why you thought W-shaped attribution models were just unreliable and maybe leading people the wrong way. So do you want to talk about what your gripe with W-shaped attribution models
Yeah, and we
is?
can share the screen here so people can see. And if you're not watching and you're listening, I'll do my best to explain. There's not, you can go to LinkedIn as well. If you search for the hashtag marketing ops debates, I'm using that. I've done a few posts there now. Basically bringing up a topic that people have a lot of people have strong opinions on, and then giving my thought and then seeing what everyone else. And I've really enjoyed it actually, because I feel like I'm learning a lot from the comments, and that's why we want to bring up the comments. I think we talked about this on one of the last podcasts, but there's so many different ways that you can do things in marketing operations. It can be very overwhelming. But it means that a lot of other people might have some really good ideas on things and help really craft your opinion on things. And I think as a marketing ops person, you have to develop your point of view and be open to other point of views, but be able to, understand everything enough to have a strong opinion so you can really drive that home in your company if you have to. But obviously being open to other people's opinions is critical too, and learning from people.
All right. So what's up with
marketing for W-shape? Yeah. So I used to love the last video with MQLs. I used to love the W-shape model. I used to think that, of course, yeah, these major milestones in the journey of your buyer, the first touch on your website, the first time they filled out a form, the touch that just before the opportunity was created. Yeah, for sure, they should get a higher weight of the opportunity value in your model compared to all of the in-between touch points. I used to think that made a lot of sense, but having implemented a fair few attribution tools in my time now, and really thinking about this over the last several years, and really digging into the data with our clients, you come to realize that life is just a lot too complicated for a model like that to really give you reality, because it's giving a higher proportion just based on the order of touch points.
Right.
And I think the order of touch points is pretty, it doesn't mean anything really.
There's more than one person that can be put into that order. So if you have a few different contacts, that order goes out the window, because there could be, different touch points from different people along the way that then might be fighting for the attribution.
Yeah, and in my example, actually, I said, you can see here, why did that ebook download by that company's intern get 30% of a $1 million up, whereas the executive dinner with the CMO got like 0.1%, right? Like, it's not weighting based on what happened. It's just weighting based on this arbitrary order of touch points based on the date time. So, so when you dig into this, what happens is you start looking at what is given the lion's share. And I used to think it's going to be right more often than not. Now I'm starting to believe that it's wrong more often than not, because especially if you start bringing in like sales touch points into your attribution model, and you have kind of like regular marketing touch points at a certain time, because you might have a demo, and then after that demo there's always like they get into an email nurture, right? Like,
yeah, your nurture is always going to be going on, and then
the opportunity is created. Yeah. So if you have kind of this order where there's a certain type of touch point that's always going to get that extra attribution weight, then I think it really just makes you not trust the model.
Yeah.
So then, as I've been digging into the data,
not even just you, it makes all the campaign, all the campaign managers not trust the model, and that then no one's going to use that data.
100%. So that's where I was going to go. So yeah, what you as marketing operations, right? Like, you really understand the data, and you start not trusting it. And I think I've had a lot of those conversations with my clients. Like, their VP of marketing or CMO is like, we've got to do attribution, and the marketing operations person puts it in, and we start digging into things, and we start just like getting this weird feeling like, okay, when we look at the data high level, it looks good. It looks great. Like, we can kind of see how things are working, but like, as soon as you layer on that W-shaped model, and then you start digging into that, you start to think, okay, well, this touch point doesn't look right. Like, why did that touch point get this? And you start getting into nitty gritty. You lose confidence. And then all it takes for, you start to ship out these reports to people, and they dig into them, or you start trying to explain. It always happens actually when there's like a big opportunity that's won, and then your CMO or VP of marketing is like, we should look at this opportunity and see all of the touch points, and then you dig into it because you want to like create a nice visual to show like how much marketing moves that opportunity forward. And then you realize, then they see like, oh wait, why did that touch point get and then it opens up the can of worms. It opens up way too many conversations, and you're all arguing over the weight of touch points. So to kind of like to summarize, my opinion then has reverted back to trying to keep things simple.
Yeah.
The simpler you can go, you can still do multi-touch attribution, but maybe just with a linear model where everything's equally weighted. You could even just look at just the total amount, of pipeline influenced by that program, and not even, divvy up the opportunity value across. That's another way, not perfect. There's pros and cons with that, but yeah, trying to keep it simple is the route that I usually go down these days. And then if you really want to do W-shape, it can be part of the story. Like, you can have multiple reports. You don't have to only use one. But living and dying by that one, I find that it's a difficult journey to go down.
Okay, so I think it would be cool to kind of dig into some of the comments here and see, what you have to say.
Should we try the first one by Josh?
Yeah, so Josh Hill from Ring Central. It's very easy to enter downward spiral driven by lack of trust. Many people quite naturally will nitpick the data to support their agenda because they're fearful of looking bad, not getting credit, not getting resources. Then the model becomes broken because of lack of trust, not because it's actually broken. Then the CMO demands a new model or tool. It doesn't get there quickly enough, and then everyone is in trouble. This is why leadership really matters in setting the tone of conversation and trust in the data.
That's a good comment.
Very good.
That is so true. And what he's really getting at there, I think, without putting words in his mouth, is when you use a model like this to compare like teams, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay to compare campaigns and channels, even though they do have teams. But when you're like, okay, I want to compare the demand gen team versus the field marketing team, maybe even you're including sales touch points, that gets like so like it creates a lot of drama when you add sales touch points in and then you compare the teams. Then what happens when the massive event that you put on that cost $1 million, right? After that event, there's like an email campaign that goes out by your demand gen team that gets all of the like, and then say maybe like 20 opportunities are created after that event, but 30% of all of those opportunities go to the email campaign just because it went out just after the event, and then all the ops were created, right?
Totally.
That's that what's going to happen between the demand gen team and the field marketing team. That's going to create conflict, right?
Totally. And I've experienced that a lot. I've been in Josh's place, and especially at teams where you do have a lot of budget that goes into those different teams. And I was actually just to quickly put it over, I just thought of like, thinking of another great analogy was like, you know, for you're talking about with your linear model, putting a point for each thing. And I think it's kind of like a basketball game and counting your points. And then you talk about sales activities, how that can really muddy the waters. And I think we always look at points to win the game, right? And that's like your marketing activities. But there are other things that we then measure that help us get there, like rebounds, assists, blocks, you know, things like that. Like those are kind of your sales activities. If you try putting weight on like an assist or something, or like a rebound, that's going to make things look weird. That's not what actually then got you to win the game. Like another team who lost the game could have got more. So it's really focusing on like kind of those key marketing activities, and know that sales is just a piece that helps you get there. Those are the things that help you either get those points or just to win the game, you know? So hard to then muddy this attribution model with all those touch points.
Well, especially I had a client a few years back, and they were trying to use visible attribution to and a lot of companies have this thing where they want to say, you know, 60% of ops come from sales and 40% come from marketing. Whatever the percentages might be, but that's 40 that's kind of like
20
or yeah, like 40 20, like 40 marketing,
yeah,
40 sales, 20 partner.
So
and then they want to say, okay, so visible, you know, let's put that in. That's gonna divide up all our opportunities and see if that is reality, because obviously all of those teams are touching all ops, probably most ops. Maybe partner might not be in all of them, but they're probably touching a lot of the ops. So we need to divvy up that each opportunity by some weight across marketing, sales. So for this situation, the problem was, so when they added sales touch points in, the sales is always qualifying, like an inbound from marketing. So the question was, should we include that sales touch point in the model or not? Because if we did, it's always going to get the
credit.
30%.
What happens right before an opportunity gets created?
Right.
There's a demo call.
And sales wanted to include it, and marketing didn't want them to include it, because it's just like a transactional, qualification. And it's not like they were doing outbound prospecting. So straight away it created conflict. That whole situation didn't really end very well at the end, and we didn't actually end up using visible, but it was a lot of cycles to get there. Anyway, should we move on to that? So Josh's point there was great.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Let's see. What about this one? Another analogy. I generally struggle with all of these attribution models. This is Samantha Sabelli. As my colleague Alex Krawczyk says, when do we use the rear view mirror to drive forward? Feels like everything is an opportunity to make assumptions off other assumptions.
Yeah, so I think there's nothing, I get what she's trying to say for sure. There's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with looking at his past data to help drive future like decision making now to impact the future. So I think you sometimes do need to look back to be able to figure out how you're going to look forward. Yeah. But you can't be too crazy about it. The assumptions on the assumptions on the assumptions is very, very critical though, because when it comes down to reporting analytics and trying to figure out, trying to understand what you're going to invest in, what your forecasting and all of that kind of stuff, you are making assumptions on assumptions on assumptions on assumptions. So you have to make sure your assumptions are correct. Otherwise, I'm going to butcher this now, but the quote by Scott Taylor, bad data, making good decisions on bad data is just, you're just making a bad decision that you don't know about yet, right? And the data, and in that, there's data and assumptions. Like if your assumptions are bad in your modeling, then you're not going to be able to make, you're kidding yourself, and the quality of your decision making is going to be impacted.
Yeah. Just another side note, Latiny Conant from Sixth Sense, she said, keep it simple. Totally agree.
Yep. Looked like a few people agree with that. What's that one up there? Yeah, this is kind of what we're saying, right? The W-shaped stuff, even completely configurable multi-touch, is so convoluted that it just makes things worse, not better, in my opinion. Better to get simple attribution up, first touch, for example, and just help identify high-value touch points. Yeah, I mean, definitely don't skip that and go into full multi-touch, right? Like if you haven't got that down yet, just simple first touch, maybe start there. Like a lot of people jump over the simple stuff and go to the extra complicated stuff, and you have to be ready.
Totally. Let's see, any final ones? Yeah, I think what one of the comments is saying here is vendors who force touches into greater value, like W models, fail to take into account the intern versus CMO phenomenon. So yeah, you can't really take into account the person as much, like you said. And then
I've got a few more here. I remember these now. So this one by Justin up here.
Yeah, so Justin Bartels, he said, Engagio was doing some neat stuff with engagement minute attribution. Each touch point was weighted by the amount of time the prospects spent engaging. Exec dinner might be 90 minutes, whereas an ebook might take 5 minutes. Op amounts were distributed based on the minute allotment for the touch point.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying, midway through, where W shape is just looking at touch points based on order, whereas this is looking at touch point based on, you're trying to understand kind of value based on time.
Or weight,
you're weighting based on, but you're trying to understand like how valuable was that touch point, but you're using a metric that you can easily get, which is time. Like how long were they ingesting this touch point? With the lack of a better term, can you ingest a touch point? But yeah, so if you're at a 90-minute thing, there's obviously going to be some nuances there, but that is a step forward in my opinion compared to waiting on just order, for sure.
Totally.
And then I like this by Matt Fleming.
There's an inverse ratio between how much math you invent to explain attribution and the value insight you actually gain from it.
Right. More complicated equals less insight. And I think that's true. I mean, you, especially when you're trying to communicate it with the CMO or some people who aren't really, used to a lot of data, then it's too complicated. You need to find a way to make it easier. Yeah,
I think the complexity, but then also, I think the whole kind of moral for this too is like keeping things simple. Also think about yourself. There needs to be something where you can easily figure out the data. You can dig into it a bit easier. If things are just convoluted and complex, I feel like you're always going to be kind of chasing this goal that you're probably never going to get to. And it's going to take up a lot of your time, then taking you away from the things that really are high priority. So,
the hard part is because the argument is that B2B marketing is so complex, you have to level up your complexity with your data and reporting and analytics to be able to match it so your decisions are right. And that's the hard part because there's probably a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, there is. But I think that you do need to find kind of a compromise to that and something that's going to make sense for 100%. The business. Totally.
Yeah, so Ian Shields here, any attribution model is only as good as the quality of data and the ease at which you gain actionable insights. Now, completely agree. I mean, it's all about, like, why do you need data, right? And why do you need analytics? To be able to make decisions, to get insight into what's working and what's not working, to make decisions. And if you're spending your whole time complaining about and discussing with the team, like if these touch points are right or not, and if they should have been weighted that way, you're spending that time not making decisions.
Totally.
So that, I think that's a really articulate way of explaining just what the point of reporting is.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. So yeah, I think
there's one more comment I wanted to call out. There's this one about machine learning models, because there was a few people that mentioned machine learning, and that is the one up there by Slay, and I think someone else mentioned it.
Yeah.
So that's where maybe I'm not smart enough to get into machine learning yet, but I think the issue for me is when stuff is in a black box. You see it a lot with predictive models, that you put in an input, goes into the black box, it gives you an output, and you just have to believe it, right? Like, so if your machine learning model is saying these touch points should be weighted higher than these, and there's no way that whatever tool that you're using that is developed, or whatever, whoever's developed this machine learning model is able to show you why, then I think as a human, it's very hard to trust it.
Yeah. I think it's just not there yet. I think machine learning might be the future, but to your point, I think that machine then needs to compute and tell you how it got to where it went.
It's like a communication issue there, right? Because it's like, yes, you want to just trust the machine, but again, with all of this stuff, you're going to dig into the data, and yes, then you might see that X touch point was weighted higher than Y touch point, and then you think that's, you as a human can really understand like what probably was something that pushed someone towards wanting to buy more, and maybe you disagree with the machine, and as soon as I think this is a human trait, as soon as you find one problem, right, you extrapolate that and you think, well, there's probably more problems like this. So now how can I trust any of this, right? So that's where I mean, maybe it's the future, maybe it's not, I'm not sure, but I think it's going to be difficult to convince people unless you, every time you look into it, is 100% right, It's hard. Human beings are really complicated, right? Like, and our marketing activities are very complicated. So I just don't know how anything can really tell what pushed someone towards an art more. And actually, we haven't even touched upon the fact that there's probably a lot that we're not even able to track that push them towards the opportunity. That's actually what I was about to go to, and I think like the big elephant in the room.
Yeah, the big elephant in the room, and we've talked about before, is on top of this, we have things that you can't measure. There's implied attribution, and I think more and more, it's becoming clear that also what these models might drive you to do is to also not invest into things that are just like not able to be tracked in that way, but can actually really create pipeline, improve pipeline, total, like lower your total cost of acquisition, and really focusing on the brand. So like with any data, like we need to figure out that there are different sources than what you could just get out of these models. And it's making the best decisions that we have with the data that we have, but also knowing there might be cases where you need to look into different areas, imply attribution, or even like get data from your marketing or your sales team. Like they are talking to their prospects. What better way than to ask them on each call, what was the thing that really got you interested in our product? And with tools like Gong or Course or any of those like call tracking tools, oh my gosh, you can now operationalize some of that data. And that's just another data source that you can then get into your decision making that you're not going to see on this attribution model.
Yeah. We talked about that in one of the newsletters, like the things to do before investing in complicated attribution. So, I think we've got a blog on our website about that. If you want to look at, there's like 5 steps to go through before investing in more complicated attribution. So check that out. I think there's a lot to this topic, and we'll be talking about it more, but I think we probably need to cut it there, right?
Yeah, we'll wrap it up. So, let's keep the debate going. Just search for hashtag Marketing Ops Debates and look for more of Charlie's posts. And let's hear your feedback. And if you have any more feedback, feel free to comment. And also, if you like this episode and you want to keep your debate going with some of your colleagues, share it with them. So, we'll see you next time on Forward Thinking.
This is Charlie. So if you liked what you heard, hit like on the platform where you watched this. Also, leave a review. Honestly, we would really, really appreciate it. You can also subscribe where you listen to your podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or even YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, which is packed full of exclusive content, updates for events or courses that we might be doing, all designed to elevate your marketing operations and B2B strategy. See you next time on Forward, and Forward it up.